are ready to go, and it's me, Graphic Man. I am joined by the great Eric Breen, or as some people call him, the Professor. I don't know what class you teach and how you got that name, but
I know how I got that name. I just don't know why I got that name.
well, I'm Graphic Man because I named myself. But see, you told me a long time ago you wish you'd have thought of a name instead of Eric Breen when you signed up for YouTube years ago, and you should change that to Professor.
With all due respect to the person who gave that to me, who I think the world of, no.
Okay, well, you had your big chance.
I'm not smart enough to pull that off. So
yeah. Okay, well, speaking of smart people, here's a segue. Let's look at our intelligent chat, or at least most
Jackson.
Of them. Yes, Ed Jackson. Recess. He always starts us off here. Let's see, the Professor and Graphic Man. All right, good. He caught what I was aiming for. Ranger Sly's laughing at that. And I am one of us. Hello there, right back to you. And Ranger Sly, fossils and foofs assemble. We will have a fossil update later on, so stay tuned to that. Here is Gary. Hello, everyone, Gary. And Gratu. Hello, Gratu. And Paulo. Today, a show about Breen breening himself. He's been practicing all day, and he's just finally ready. Jambo. I got him on the phone the other day. Bless his heart. He can't stay away from me far enough. But and speaking of Jambo, stay tuned. I want to show a few books that Jambo sent to me. That was very kind of him. And here's the Jackson Roy Kirk. And he was afraid, but now he can put those fears to rest. So good noticing that. Hello, folks. Scotty's here. Let us go. Well said. The comic book curator. Hello, my fellow castaways. Yes. Yeah. If we were on an island, we would want our books with us. Hello, Graphic Man, says Michael Taylor. And Fireball. Hey, he is ready. Time to catch up. Boy, the lettuce and catch up. I wonder what's coming up next. Here's Ron. Ron says, hi, guys. Hello, Ron. You mean Eric Breen is his real name? Yes, Jackson. So is actually Jackson Roy Kirk's real name is Roy. I found that out the other day. Missing Mars. Hello, fossils. And Scotty says, you could change your name. No one could find my channel because most people couldn't type Japanese. I'm afraid I can't either. So good that I know you with this name. That's not the name Jackson calls him. Good evening, everyone. Oh, and Jackson, too. You feel the love tonight. Hey, Graphic Man. We'll accept that. Jacob, Graphic Man, and Eric did better there. Okay, look here. It's Gotham City Comics. Hello, good morning. Yes, because Arizona doesn't change their clock, so it must be morning already there for Arizona. Wow, wonder what else is on. It has started already. Let's see. We'll leave with Jackson Roy Kirk's. I want to show some things that Jambo sent me before we get involved in our wonderful, wonderful. Let's try this first. Boom. Okay. It was very nice that I may have said Jackson. I mean Jambo. Jambo sent me this nice Lone Ranger. And he didn't have to do that, but I sure appreciate it. I don't have these. This is great. And here's another Lone Ranger. Somebody sneaking up behind the Ranger. But you can't sneak up on him for too much. And this one, the Lone Ranger's got this guy. I think Lone Ranger has been tired of tracking this guy for a couple of days. He looks really haggard. And kind of just like he could use some coffee or something. And Jambo also sent me this nice Looney Tunes. I do not have it, Jambo, so thank you. And his fishing has gone horribly wrong. He knows I collect Looney Tunes. I collect all kinds of stuff. Arguing with the umpire.
What if that's Angel Hernandez?
Yes. I love these jokes. Now, I'm going to show you the top half first. This is a cool looking Roy Rogers. Okay. Now look, he has just seen a dangerous desperado. He's pulled out his gun. He's he's very concerned. And Bullet kind of gives it away. Bullet's like, hey, what's going on, folks?
Hmm.
Bullet is not very concerned about whatever Roy is staring at. So I think one is acting and one is just kind of hanging there. Anyway, thank you so much, Jambo. I appreciate it very, 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 very much. Before we get to the Avengers, I just want to update you. I have read this pulp, this reproduction pulp, and I wanted to point this out. It's The Liquid Man. And folks, this is a dynamite story. I know Marvel has the Hydro Man, but this guy was just absolutely ruthless. He killed so many people and come through a pipes of a lady's bathtub and killed her and killed a little girl, killed all kinds of people. And I highly recommend this. So this would be the September 1941. We haven't gone to World War II yet, but highly, highly recommend it. So, of course, I'll be starting on this fantastic adventure. Death Plays a Game. Apparently that's death. So, and right after that will be Fantastic Story with this cool looking creature. And I'm having a ball. I don't mind saying so. Some of you are probably saying, Graphic Man, have you been working on any more pulps of yourself? Yes, I have. I made this one just yesterday. And I thought that cover is just dynamite. And I even love what they did with the logo. It just can't get any cooler than that. Here's a meteorite crashing into the earth. What fun, right? And one more. I made another Amazing Stories. Check out the brain on this guy. I can't wait to read this. Goofiest thing you ever saw. So, but enough of that. We will get back to the chat. And where did I leave off? Oh, good. Jackson has made us a nice handy dandy line. And Hush Jackson, I like you. I named you especially in the greeting, so yeah. Okay. And thank you, Lady M. Merle Haggard. Okay. One of us looks like Merle Haggard. Yay, cool Lone Ranger. I agree. Jambo is the man. Love Lone Ranger, great stuff. Lone Ranger looked like Eric when he was first starting to grow the beard. Oh, well, could be. Great AOK from Jambo. Yes. Go find Jambo's site and subscribe to him immediately. On that, Roy Rogers cover was wondering how he could get away with hogging all the steak for himself, and Bullet wanted all the steak too. Yep. Liquid Man, interesting villain. He was a tough son of a gun. And I would love to ruin the surprise for you, but I won't. It was pretty good. Amazing. I agree. Amazing stories. Was that Joe Biden? No, no, it wasn't. Nice books, Graphic Man. Why, thank you. The Brain Cockpit Pulp cover reminds me of an old DC sci-fi cover. Probably Strange Adventures or something like that. Yeah, the more I think about it. That was a pink cover too, if I remember. All right. Enough of that wonderful giddiness. So we are probably going to talk about the Avengers today. So if you don't like the Avengers, well, tune in next time. In fact, I'll give you a reason to tune in next time. As soon as I find the great shows, there we go. Next week, we will have a return of the 4-color fossils. And you think, how could that get better than that? We'll also be joined by Dr. Fibes. So tune in next week for the fossils and Fibes. This channel 1 week from today. So, Breen, you are an Avengers fan. And what makes the Avengers the best for you? I mean, you might like something else, but a lot of people wanted the X-Men or something else.
Well, in my case, when I first started collecting, and reading, which was late 1975, the X-Men really weren't a big deal.
No.
They were a bi-monthly book that could have gone either way. And so, and they were characters that I didn't know that well, or no one knew that well, because other than Cyclops and Professor Xavier and Eugene, it was a bunch of new people. The Avengers, on the other hand, there was Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, and they all had their own books that you could get. And it had, I think the first Avengers I bought new was 149, which was wrapping up the alternate Earth storyline with the Squadron Supreme / Sinister. Roxxon, where Patsy Walker got the Hellcat suit, and her husband Buzz from the girls comics from the 40s, 50s, and 60s was now a full-fledged villain.
Yes.
And it was very cool. And I said they so I had access to a couple of the back issues, because you couldn't go out and get the trades in those days. They didn't exist yet. But there was, I was able to get some of the back issues, so I was able to get some of the backstory. And in the very next issue, they were all getting together to do a lineup change, which at the time was kind of a big deal. For the next several years, it was a big deal. Now, it kind of became less. But so it seemed like there was more going on in the Avengers, or that it resonated more so with me than, say, the X-Men. I mean, I was a huge Fantastic Four fan, but the Fantastic Four, those members, wake up, Jackson.
Yes. I didn't want to disturb you by showing that too much. The Fantastic Four.
And then, but those, hell, when I first started, the thing had just become Human. It was replaced by Power Man. So there was a lot going on over there too.
Yeah.
But the Avengers, I don't know, it just seemed like, and then the second issue, everybody gets together to pick the new team, and we get a reprint, because at Marvel at the time,
yes,
that happened far too frequently, which is kind of how Jim Shooter got his job.
Yeah.
But when they came back with 151, they announced the team, and Moondragon had kind of been getting in Thor's ear, saying, "You're too big for this, for the Avengers," and he started listening, and so which factored in into the Kree Skrull, I mean, not the Korvac Saga,
right?
Which we will get to at some point. But it just, I don't know. I said it just struck a chord. Right? So when I first started, Avengers and Marvel Team Up were my two favorite books, and the Avengers remain my favorite team to this day.
Well, for me, it was more of a slow getting into it, because I wanted the individual. I wanted the Spider-Man. I wanted Hulk. I wanted Iron Man, Captain America, and occasionally Thor. So I wanted that single adventure, because in my mind, I was these guys. I was pretending to be the Hulk. I was in the backyard tearing my shirt and using my mother's green food coloring and all that. But I couldn't really do the X-Men or the Avengers, because I can't be, 7 people at the same time. But later you start to really go, hey, it's good that the character has somebody to talk to. Otherwise he's talking to himself all the time, which is okay. But I got into X-Men late. I was on the spinner rack, number 141, where they're going into that, that time thing where they're in the future, the marvelous future of 2013 or whatever that was. And I thought, what is this? Because, I knew what the X-Men were. They were just this little group over here, but I just had limited money for Fantastic Four and Spider-Man, Hulk, and you name it. But so the Avengers were there, but it's like, well, I can always read Captain America. I can always read Iron Man. So but then you go, wow, these Avengers are great. So I got to go get all those. So in fact, I will start by showing my oldest Avenger is number 6. And I just love number 6, probably because the Rick Jones power stance here. He is. I love number 6 so much that I had to get a reproduction of it, not for resale. So whatever you do not sell that. And then of course the True Believers. But just showing about 5 of these just to get the whet the appetite. Here's an oldie with the first appearance of Wonder Man.
That was one of the first back issues I got, and I was a huge Wonder Man fan from that issue. And who shows up at the end of the third one I buy new? Wonder Man. So it's just like everything just kind of fell into place.
So you didn't have to go. It's too bad they can't bring him back. So here's one that goes into the Doctor Doom storyline. And here's a little what if that doesn't even really have the Avengers in it too much, but has these other guys. But we'll get into that. So where shall we start? Shall we start with Korvac or where do you want to start?
Whichever you want to start with first, but I would suggest maybe going with the Kree Skrull War and maybe going chronologically.
You bet.
We'll start with. I wanted to show this because this was one of my favorite covers of all time, and it's been homaged maybe more times than Spider-Man 300.
Is that that's the annual, right?
Yes, this is the one where they accidentally where Jan presses a button by mistake, and the team is sent back to basically the end of Avengers #2, and they end up getting hooked up with this character in Scarlet Centurion, who turns them basically into their enforcers, and the Avengers take over the world. And the Avengers from issue 56 go back and they have to save the world from that group of Avengers. Now, the Scarlet Centurion may or may not have ended up being either Kang, Immortus, or Rama Tut, so it kind of fits in with later stories, but it's just a beautiful Buscema cover. This and the Hulk annual, the Steranko, I saw were just beautiful for 1968 annuals. But so yeah, the Kree Skrull War.
Okay.
Good.
No, I was reading Ranger Sly. Yes, the Kree Skrull War starts with there's these 3 guys, and they're seeing some aliens, and they were told not to tell anybody. But I'm getting way ahead of it. In the preliminary story,
yeah, if you go back to the very beginning of it, Avengers '89. Captain Marvel comes back from spending a lot of time in the negative zone, and he's captured by the Avengers because apparently he's picked up an unhealthy amount of radiation from being there as long as he was. So that's kind of the catalyst for him being in the story, and a lot of things unfold in the next couple issues where basically Ronan is concocted a plan to basically devolve humanity.
Yeah.
Which has repercussions leading into the Kree Skrull War. Basically, the next couple issues deal with that. Here's number 90, and here's number 91, and this is for Jackson. Or for Paulo. I'm going to Breen myself.
Okay.
Why not? But then when the team as it's currently comprised there comes back, they're basically told by the big 3 that they have violated basically every Avengers code known to man.
Yeah.
And they disband the team. Or so it seems. As we find out, and again, that's it takes place in this issue with a really nice Neil Adams cover. But then we find out in issue 93, it starts off with a Vision coming into Avengers Mansion almost dead, because he's been attacked by Skrulls. And this leads to, my opinion, maybe the neatest part of any comic book I've ever read. And it's because basically the first half of it is Neil Adams doing, Ant-Man comes back to go into the Vision to repair him. And this gives Neil Adams a chance to just absolutely cut loose with the art. And, Roy Thomas gets to kind of get his freak on because he gets to make a lot of EC references.
Yes, I noticed that. I regret it.
Yeah, it was, it goes, and this looks just like Metropolis, because Fritz Lang's, not Clark Kent's.
Right.
And there's a line about the Al Feldstein and EC fan addicts. And,
Yep.
But it also, I said, the art is just, and you got to remember, I said, in 1971, you hadn't seen a lot of art like this.
No, and fortunately, the art is so good. It helps me because I reread this yesterday to refresh my memory, and I thought Ant-Man would never shut up, but
yeah,
that's Roy just kept on going.
Oh yeah, well, yeah, it's not Henry that never shuts up. It's Roy, but it literally half of the issue is that, and it's just beautiful. I said, if you had anybody that hasn't read that, you owe it to yourself. It's a treat. You definitely need to check that out because it's a tour de force of storytelling and just beautiful art. And then we find out there's a Senate hearing that the Fantastic Four is asked to speak, and some of the Avengers are there, and the Thing is basically giving them shit, and and of course Clint Barton's got a temper also, so a fight ensues, and we find out that the Fantastic Four. I'm trying to remember if the Fantastic Four at that hearing were Skrulls or not. I always lose track of how much that happened in some of these issues, because one thing I do give credit for is this is the first truly, I use the term sweeping epic in comics history. Well, basically, for anybody that doesn't know, the Kree Skrull War is basically, it's not actually, there's not much of a war, but basically the Kree and the Skrull they're both trying to decide whether they want to enslave the Earth, use the Earth as a strategic outpost, or destroy it entirely. And they're kind of battling over who gets to do what. And there's a Captain Marvel is basically goaded into creating something called an Omniwave, which with the Kree, it's like an intelligence gathering device, but in the hands of the Skrulls, it's a deadly weapon. So there's a lot of other things going on. There's Triton shows up, and he's looking for the Fantastic Four, can't find them. He shows up to ask the the Avengers to help him find Black Bolt, and that kind of crosses over with an issue of Amazing Adventures, number 8, I believe, 8 or 9, I believe, and it's and apparently, what's his name? Ronan's made a deal with Maximus.
Yes.
And so there's all kinds of dirty double dealings going on, and there's just I said it's and it gets to the climax of it, which unfortunately does not have Neil Adams' art.
Yeah.
Because he unfortunately fell behind, and it got to the point to where Roy had to replace him at the last minute or risk the book being late. And that's one of the reasons why Roy and Neil didn't work together after that, or actually even speak that much. But Rick Jones gets involved, or becomes more involved in the story, where he's basically trapped in the negative zone, and Ronan gets him out, but he ends up being locked. He has to be locked in a room with the Supreme Intelligence,
yes,
who basically unlocks something in Rick Jones's mind, which gives him the power to manifest Golden Age heroes to help the Avengers fight the Skrulls in the in the big battle, and that doesn't last long. But it also what it also does is there's a senator named H. Warren Craddock who has been trying to stir up anti-alien sentiment among Earth's population. It's basically, I always looked at it as Roy Thomas's, how he would have, if he'd been around 20 years ago during the House of Un-American Activities Commission or Committee. So that's kind of like his take on that. And so that when the Destiny wave or whatever it is that Rick Jones has, it brings the Golden Age characters to life temporarily. It also causes H. Warren Craddock to revert back into the fourth Skrull from Fantastic Four #2. And then the angry mob, as you can see in that panel, just basically beat him to death.
Yeah.
And they find the real Craddock, and their reputation's restored. Everything's fine again. But since one of the things that Roy Thomas was so good at is like keeping threads. There's always like a loose thread here and there. Goliath, who had tried to basically stop a Skrull ship by punching it earlier in the story, he can't grow anymore, but he takes off in a ship to try to stop the Skrulls, and he disappears.
Yeah.
So the story ends with them not knowing where he is. And we find out, I think he ends up finding a amnesiac Hercules, which leads into the next story arc that takes place over, leads into the 100th issue.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I realize that, I know I left out a lot of important parts in this, but it's one of the most reprinted stories in the history of Marvel. So I'm sure most people have already read it at least once, but I always try to go back and read it every couple of years, and I still fumble through it.
And speaking of reprinting it, if you want to catch this whole story, there's a 2-part edition that they printed with great wraparound covers. This is the first one. And what I like about these is it gives you that whole build-up. They'll have Walt Simonson do some of these pencils, and that gives you kind of the backstory, what leads up to it. And there's the 3 guys that were told, hey, don't tell everybody that there was aliens here, and they agree. Which I thought, now wait a minute. Hey, if you know something, speak up. And of course, later they do, which causes trouble. Now, here's your caveat. If you do speak up, the government's going to give you a hard time. And boy, they did, thanks to that senator or congressman that was not really. This is the #2, the follow-up to the Kree Skrull War. So you can find these probably at mycomicshop.com. Another truly fabulous wraparound cover. And I will try to do it justice here with this screen. You can see how busy that is. They had to get out the ruler and make sure every one of those was in formation. And so, but it's printed on really great paper, and the colors just really pop. Shows off the great artwork all throughout this. I believe it's Buscema that finishes it, right?
Yes. And there's even if the story's not particularly your cup of tea, the art in that, the way they power, they need to get their ship into, I guess somewhere either in the Kree or Skrull galaxy, and in order to, they use Thor's hammer to provide the additional power to power the ship. And just some of the art in that is amazing. Neil Adams was just the best.
Yeah, and it's not bad having Buscema come in as pitch hitting as well. So
no, and I think that Tom Palmer, inking both helped, and it's a shame that he didn't. I always wanted to see. There was part of me that wanted to see Neil Adams go back and do not his version of 97 is like a special edition, but I guess there was too much animosity built up. Tim, hope everything went well yesterday.
Oh yes, his big procedure. Yes.
Yeah, so we we had a 3-hour and 40-minute conversation on the movies of 1982 Sunday morning.
I saw some of that.
That's
Yeah. I'm leaving this comment up because Rick Jones. Yes. I'll use a reference Eric's going to be able to get real easily. Dusty Rhodes, the Booker. He keeps putting himself into the main event. So that's the reference. Rick Jones, somebody at Marvel loved this guy because he gets to be the Hulk's guy. He gets to be Captain America's guy. He gets to be Team Brigade. He gets to be the Avengers. Now he's stuck with Captain Marvel. It's like, and he saves the day in this story we just went through. It's like if you could buy stock in Rick Jones back in the early 60s, you'd be rich today. So,
and he figured very prominently in Peter David's Hulk run.
Yes,
and the subsequent Snapper. Captain Marvel series, and Rick was so much more to Marvel than Snapper was to Justice League because honestly, Rick, I know ended up as a regular character in the early 2000s Hour Man series, but they somebody at Marvel did really like Rick Jones, but he was what do you call this, a walking MacGuffin or a Deus Ex Machina or whatever you get.
Forrest Gump. It's always there for the pivotal sidekick him. Yeah, he's way better than Snapper. Those first Justice League books to me are just kind of unreadable because of Snapper. I just want to take a marker and just eliminate him from the story.
Scoodly Dudley, Daddy-O. Come on.
Yeah.
Maybe we should beat feet to the next event.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that holds up well.
Well, you know what, though? That's one of the best things about reading old DC are these men that were just tragically unhip, trying to sound hip. And it gives those old books a charm that, between that and insert like Barry Allen, who is secretly the Flash, no matter who it is, you get that. Like, in case you forgot from 4 panels ago when they told us. Yeah. But I remember they were writing to a much younger audience, but still made for some awesome early issues of Teen Titans.
Yeah, but let's keep this Snapper guy around so he could take the notes of our meetings. So can you imagine giving him dictation?
That's quite the come down. The Justice Society had Wonder Woman taking the minutes, and the Justice League had Snapper.
Yeah. And how can he write when he's busy?
That's a good question.
I would have broken his fingers, and that would have been the end of that. So, all right, I know, mild-mannered Micah.
Before we go, I said this Avengers 94.
Yeah, let me get you to that screen. There we go. Yes, these are the covers to that.
There's 95.
Now, admittedly, I was kind of perturbed when it got to be the Maximus stuff because it's like, wait a minute, we got this war going on, and now you're making us do this left turn over here with the Inhumans, which, well, it was fine, but I don't know if they were dragging it out.
Well, I think, like I said, this was grander in scope than other things that anything that really happened in Marvel, arguably since the Galactus trilogy, which was actually only 2 issues. If you think about it.
Yeah, but 2 and a smidge. Yeah.
Yeah, because it basically started in the middle of 48 and ended halfway through 50.
Right.
But Stan and Jack were just gifted at concise storytelling. I mean, I look at that and I think about what would that be today? Just like you said, you started with the X-Men with 141. Days of Future Past originally was a 2-part story.
Yes.
That would be an omnibus today.
Yeah.
It would be, it would have 30 tie-ins. It would be completely diluted.
Yeah.
But
and go ahead.
no, I said so. I think that's why, Roy or maybe Neil wanted to, because Neil took over the Inhuman strip from Jack when he left to go to DC. So he did the art for about 4 or 5 of the Amazing Adventures issues.
Yeah.
And and I think I'm guessing Roy was writing that and just added that to this story. I didn't mind because I said it's, it just, I could add a little bit to it that, the more characters you can bring in, I think if you can keep it all, together.
And when Triton shows up and he's going to get into that truck, he commandeers a vehicle and he gets shot a bunch of times. And out was the shoot. Oh, we missed him, drat. But they really got him. And there he's explaining, oh, no, my injuries. I need to tell you about what's going on. Now, as far as Ranger Sly here, Rick Jones was incredibly important to the Hulk because he's the one that feels bad that Banner is the Hulk. And if you didn't have Rick Jones figuring stuff out, thinking about things, talking to him, it would just be Bruce Banner going, I don't feel so good. Me, the Hulk. So Rick was important. But then it seems like we don't know what to do with them. So let's give him to Captain America. Oh, let's give him to Captain Marvel. So that's all I was saying. But early on, I think he was a fantastic character. And like you say, he kept getting used, and he's a rock star, and blah, blah, blah. Which makes me kind of think of the Forrest Gump because he's doing everything, But Rick belongs in the Hulk books. That's his home. Well, okay, yeah. I would say that. Have you guys seen the Dave Chappelle chick where he says, I'm Rick Jones? Yes, I'm Rick Jones. Yeah, I'll get to working on that. The second Kree Skrull War has lasted 30 issues when the Silver Surfer.
Yes, I vaguely remember that, but
it doesn't hold up to what you're saying is the first one.
Well, I personally no, but yeah, but then again, like I said, I mean, I'm an Avengers mark.
Yeah. Okay.
So that helps.
Also made Nick Fury becoming Ultimate Nick Fury. Huh. Okay.
And they found a way to put Nick Fury in the Kree Skrull War too.
Yeah. Yes. All right. Any closing thoughts on that Kree Skrull War? I thought it was nice that we remembered the cows, and I remembered at the end of FF2. Of course, I'm reading it in a little bitty book. When I was a kid, I didn't have those first 6 issues, and I'm reading that and I'm thinking, hey, it looks like there's 3 cows. Weren't there 4 Skrulls? And so this kind of helps me tie up some loose ends. That whatever happened to them, they don't seem to be concerned that there's 3 cows. We've done our job. Good night.
And when people, you think about this event, basically every plot point, everybody involved in this were, other than the Avengers themselves, spun out of the Fantastic Four.
Yeah,
it's just amazing when you think of, and I'm not going to get into a big long debate as to how much goes to Stan, how much goes to Jack, but so much came out of the Fantastic Four that it's almost like it shouldn't have been possible. And so I said there is no Kree Skrull War, obviously, without the Fantastic Four.
Yeah,
and I said so. It's just amazing how much it can be, how much of Marvel is mined from the original Stan and Jack run.
The Skrulls are great to read because they're always calling each other, you miserable cur, you horrible dog. And they're just angry at each other. And They're very arrogant.
And Papa King Skrull's not happy that he had a daughter, not a son. And
Yes.
yeah, so that's right, kids. The Skrulls are sexist.
They sure are. They sure are. And sometimes the girls have wrinkled chins, and sometimes they have smooth chins. It's whoever's drawing them, I think.
Well, yeah, if you want the the Skrull chick to be hot, you take away the the lines there, and
yeah, the FF was my favorite book. A lot of us can say that, Michael. It just becomes. Oh, they would have been way ahead of their time, wouldn't they?
yeah. So when we get into discussions over the greatest runs in comic history, I immediately disqualify Stan and Jack because it's not fair.
Yeah.
Because I say, whether it's Stan and Jack on the Avengers or Stan and Steve and John on Spider-Man, it's just, I said they're just, because without them, nothing that followed can exist. Yes, Johnny did.
And I loved that storyline, and I thought robbed when they didn't really do much with it for like 5 years. Roy Thomas wrote scripts to be often so convoluted with his obsession with forgotten Golden Age minor details. I could see that. There were times I was like, wow. As I was rereading the story, when he mentions the Metropolis and things like that, I thought, okay, I don't know how this is going to play out. Of course, they weren't thinking, what's this going to sound like 40 years from now, 50 years from now? They were in their own time. But sometimes you can drop a little too much. You can show how smart you are by, I'm going to make an obscure reference that only 5 people will get, but they'll think I'm brilliant. So I see that. It still works, and he still does a good job.
Well, I'm glad that they resolved that the way they did, because even though Johnny didn't know better, at least they kind of retconned that he still technically stole his best friend's girl, but that never sat well with me. So I'm kind of I know a lot of people say that was a cheap, way to resolve that. I actually liked it.
I liked it too. And I wish that they had actually set out to do that. Of course, they didn't. I don't know when it came to them that, hey, you know what? We could make her a Skrull. But had they planned it out 10 years in advance, of course, I don't think you can do that back anyway. But that would have taken some major anyway.
Yeah,
how do you keep that a secret? So
no, I wish that I don't think they use that character anymore. And at some point that relationship just kind of went by the wayside. And but anyway, that's I guess that's for another time.
Sure.
Shall we go on to the Avengers Defenders War?
Yes. Let me say hi to Captain Beyond. Good to see you. Thank you for showing up. We appreciate it. And which one are we heading on to now?
Avengers Defenders War.
Oh, yes. As you do that, for what we're about to talk about, folks, if you don't have all these issues, then get you this epic. It's volume number 7. It deals with the Defenders War, and it does a great job of going back and forth between the Defenders and the Avengers. All right, there's your setup.
Yeah. This basically is the first real company crossover event. It's hard to believe when you think about it now, but this was 1973, and it really hadn't been done.
You mean team? Because the company, they had the Avengers going into the FF or fighting the Hulk.
But I mean, it'd be like one issue. This was a back and forth that lasted. It was a summer event.
Yeah. Okay.
And it came about because Steve Englehart was writing both books at the time, and he had to convince his editor, Roy Thomas, that he could keep it together and not be late with any of the books. It was, I'm sure, the Neil Adams thing was probably still in the back of his mind, because it was only basically a year and a half later.
Okay.
But this one, the plot is a lot more simple. There was this device called the Evil Eye that had been lost in Fantastic Four 54 and had now split into 6 pieces scattered around the globe. And Dormammu wants to get the pieces to, I guess, achieve ultimate power or whatever one does with the 6 pieces of the Evil Eye. And Loki's in the story, but Loki had just been blinded. So he's kind of just there to get in the way. I don't know. I'm not really sure what his deal was, but so basically, Loki has, or Dormammu has Loki go to the Avengers and tell them that a group of the people that comprise the Defenders have turned bad and are trying to get the pieces for their own nefarious purposes. So why he sneaks off to tell the Avengers that, and it sets up confrontations between members of the Avengers and members of the Defenders. Problem was, the Defenders were just ridiculously powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, the Avengers had Thor. The Defenders had the Hulk, Submariner, Doctor Strange, and the Silver Surfer. You get through them, and Hawkeye and Valkyrie don't really seem like that big a deal. But the way they set it up is one team had to win the battle to kind of move the story along. So, like the event, like Silver Surfer fought the Vision and Scarlet Witch, and while they're fighting, Scarlet Witch gets knocked out, and these natives put her in front of a volcano to sacrifice her to the volcano gods, and that's how the Silver Surfer, Vision goes to save the woman he loves. Silver Surfer gets the piece of the eye. When Iron Man fights Hawkeye cheats. He basically causes Iron Man's arm to go down and like blast a building, and he has a choice: let people die or keep the fight going, knowing what Iron Man will do. So he cheats to win. Doctor Strange just basically kicks the Black Panther and Mantis's ass with no trouble because he's Doctor Strange.
Yes.
So the event, and Swordsman and Valkyrie, one of the people that owns this castle where the piece of the eye is, shoots the Swordsman in the back, and that's how Valkyrie gets the piece, and she tends to him, make sure he's okay before she leaves, because they realize, even though they're fighting each other, that the Avengers, they realize that they both teams have honor, and then it kind of culminates when one of the pieces fought over by Captain America and Submariner, and they recall their association in World War II, and they start to realize that somebody's been setting them up, so they agree to work together. So the two teams come together, but there's one piece missing. It's out in California, and that's where the Hulk and Thor happen to be.
Yeah,
which gives the fans one of the great, Hulk Thor battles of all time. This is the cover of that. And while I'm here, I said this Avengers 116 says the Vision Silver Surfer fight. 117 is Namor, Captain America, and then 118 is where they come together. The eye basically starts devolving people. A lot of devolving going on in these old stories, and basically all the superheroes, all the superpowered characters are kind of enlisted to fight. There's a scene where Dracula is fighting on the side of the good guys. Give you an idea of, hard to believe given Marvel today, but Thanos is in one panel.
Mm-hmm.
One panel. Because he wasn't that big a deal.
Growing up, I didn't think much of him. I didn't really read Captain Marvel, and so Nowadays, boy, that's all they talk about is Thanos. But
Oh,
I'm old school. So.
to me the greatest Thanos story of all time was Avengers Annual 7 and Marvel 2-in-1 Annual 2. Jim
Yeah,
Starlin did both of them, and Thanos was killed, and he was still dead when they did the death of Captain Marvel,
yeah.
which lent a lot of weight to that story.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I digress. But yeah, at the time he was just worthy of one panel, and so obviously it's the Scarlet Witch. That basically what happens is all of the characters get separated from their powers by Dormammu. You can't separate Wanda from hers, so she basically saves the day. And so, like I said, Earth is saved. Everybody's back to normal, and when the story ends, while this is going on, Wanda was developing a very anti-human streak,
Yeah.
and she basically, when Nick tries to thank her, she basically tells him to go F himself. Says, I didn't do it for you humans. And then so Nick turns around and goes, okay, then let's talk about you defenders. And Doctor Strange goes, no, Nicholas Fury, let us not, and gives him the old Charles Xavier mind wipe. So, because it's okay when we do it, but yeah. So basically, yeah, Doctor Strange just wipes everybody's memory of the defenders. But I mean, it was the story itself was good, but the main part was it was a fanboy's dream
Yeah, you bet.
getting the fights that because the Hawkeye Iron Man, you had to go back to the first few appearances
Sure.
when he was a villain. The Vision. I don't think Marvel has ever quite settled on how powerful he is. That he could go toe to toe with the Surfer for a while. And then, like I said, you can never get enough, Hulk Thor fights.
Right.
So yeah, that's
I
so
never ranked the Vision on the level like Phoenix or
I didn't either.
those guys. But what I thought of Vision was he's almost in Juggernaut's categories. He's practically unstoppable.
Yeah,
Um,
there's one of the things that when I'm blasting through these covers, which there's Avengers 158 where the Vision and Wonder Man finally go at it.
yeah.
That's and Wonder Man is they always made a point to say that the only person stronger than him is Thor,
Yep.
and yet he and the Vision basically it's a stalemate. So he's up there.
Yeah, and we didn't say back in the Kree Skrull, the Vision goes nuts there and almost kills somebody.
Oh yeah, and that's depicted on the cover of '96. I was gonna say,
Right.
yeah, because it's over Wanda,
Yeah.
and the other members of the team are like, wait a minute, why is this android that doesn't have any emotions, beating this guy to death? And because that was starting to advance the storyline of the Vision and Scarlet Witch falling in love.
Yes.
But yeah, like I said, though, this was fun. I mean, I said it's just I said a lot of fun battles, and it's just like I said, and events have grown since then. But this was not a bad first one.
Yes, and by the way, thank you for the thumbs up and the likes. And if I could make a little plug here, when the show's over, if you can refresh your screen and then just make a gremlin in the comments because they will take away 30 of these viewers immediately. Howler Mouse has commented on it on his channel. So, like right now, we have 32 people watching. When it's all over, they'll take my number down to like 5, and then so the numbers have to crawl back up from that. But anyway, we do appreciate any and all thanks we get. Page, and it's 22 makes more sense. Yeah, yeah. Okay. By the way, and if you can't get those, I recommend this is number 7. You see the 7 on the back. The the great Collector is on this. By the way, I had an image of the Collector I wanted to show you. That issue. Make sure I get the right one. The Collector, he's an old guy, and he collects things, right? This is the issue. Notice what Wasp calls him. You despicable old fossil. And I thought I'd point that out to the crowd. So, yep, the old guys collect things. So,
Oh, and he's going to be on next Wednesday.
as a geeky puppet?
No, he'll be on our show next Wednesday.
Yep, a lot of fossils will be
Yes.
here next Wednesday. So yes, make sure you tune in for that. Let's see here. Word to the Jackson Roy Craig. Oh, I missed a few. Vision was very scary when he got mad, moving forward to continuity due to Gyrich when he was forbidden to travel. Yes. Vision, you don't want to mess with him.
Well, do you remember when he... Do you remember when he took over the world during Stern's run?
I thought that was brilliant, and that helps us get the West Coast Avengers. I thought that was great.
I said someday we should just we should just have a discussion about comics, Marvel comics in the 80s, how just great they were. And yeah, I said that the Avengers, Stern's Avengers, I think was brilliant, and it's so far down on the list of great, runs of the 80s that a lot of people don't even get to it, to say nothing of, spawning the West Coast Avengers. But
the Contest of Champions, a great 3-part little series in the 80s. However, I would have put somebody in it besides Daredevil and Invisible Woman, but I still liked it. I like the idea of megalomaniac, powerful people that are in control of everybody, moving everybody around like they're pieces on a chess game. When did Stern take over?
Early 220s, I think.
Okay. Of Avengers.
Yeah, so I'm thinking Bob Hall was maybe writing it up to that point. Yeah, it's Ranger. Either his or, oddly enough, and we'll talk about this in a bit, Jim Shooter, because I said his run will figure prominently in what we're going to be talking about shortly.
Yeah, and by the way, I asked Eric, can we talk about the Korvac Saga? And that's how I pronounce it, Saga. I was very interested in Korvac, and I felt a little let down at the ending, and I really liked the what if that showed up later, but I don't want to jump ahead. Is there anything we need to nail down on the Defenders War crossover, whatever you call it?
No, I think we're good there.
Okay.
Other than I wish I had Defenders 11, which I was sure that I did, or I would have shown that. But
well, I didn't notice. So let me set the stage, or can I set? Nope. All I can do is show basically this what if. I really liked this what if, and we're not really going to talk too much about the what if, but so in case you're wondering what we're talking about, how does Korvac start? He starts off as some guy that's like a cube. His body is a cube. Yeah.
I think he maybe the Thor annual. It was first appearance was Defenders Giant Size number 3, I think.
Okay.
And then he was in a Thor annual, and then this, if I'm getting the timeline correctly, but yeah. So before we get into that, I'm gonna show some issues of the Avengers that, and kind of like talk about some of the seeds that Shooter ended up planting for the Korvac Saga. I'm showing this because this was the first Avengers that I bought new, and that led into the picking of the new team.
Yeah.
And then at the end of this, Wonder Man shows up as a Zuvimbi because they didn't want to use the word zombie for some reason. And they went down to Nolans and fought this guy with the black talon, and
pretty good Kirby cover.
These
for the 80s, yeah.
Oh well, and when he came back in '76, he did half the covers and Kane did the other half.
Right.
And now they're just equally glorious to me. And then this is followed by the Avengers Annual number 6, which I forgot to pull, but that's where Wonder Man gets his marbles back.
Yeah.
And he ends up hanging out with the team. And the next storyline, they're fighting, Atuma, and Dr. Doom crosses over into Supervillain Team Up, which has interior art by Jim Shooter. Yeah, I don't know that he drew all that much, but he did the art on this. And this is 155.
Oh, nice.
And
yeah.
There's at the end of this, Vision basically makes a deal with Dr. Doom to stop Atuma. And at this time, Vision's becoming, less, he's like turning off his emotions and basically distancing himself from Wanda. And here's where they come back home and they fight the statue of the Black Knight that's been, because the Black Knight himself has been in the 12th century for years at this point. And then Simon, who has the Vision, has Simon's brain patterns, so that they would think alike is understandable. So Simon has an attraction to Wanda, and even though the Vision said he's renouncing any humanity he might have, he basically wants to kick Wonder Man's ass on principle, I guess. So they go at it, and they fight to a draw, and
it was bound to happen.
Yeah, and that leads into the fighting of Graviton, who's this guy who basically can just completely control gravity, and he beats the crap out of the Avengers, and at the end, Thor pops up to help him. Black Panther and recruits Thor.
Yes.
Or Thor shows up in the mansion. They go to where Graviton has this entire island suspended, and when they finally defeat him, in one of the more, you would believe in a DC book because DC characters were so overpowered, but an entire island falls a mile to Earth, and Iron Man, Thor, Vision, and Wonder Man catch it and then throw it out into the ocean. And then the next issue, the ones that are still left at the mansion run into Grim Reaper, who is Wonder Man's biological brother, Eric
cover.
Williams.
Wonderful cover.
And it's a great story too. And it basically find out that Simon Williams isn't actually alive in the technical sense, because the bands that he puts on all the characters to basically disrupt their nerve system doesn't work on him. He basically kicks his brother's ass. Then the next 2 issues, Wonder Man gets a new costume made by the Beast, not Jan. And Ant-Man comes out of nowhere and attacks them as if he didn't know any of them. Find out that his mind's been messed up by Ultron, who has tasked him to make him a mate. And that's how we get the first.
If I could pause you there,
Sure.
I enjoyed that little old Ant-Man could just wipe them all out. That gets me. So go ahead.
Yeah. And Ultron, Thor pops up again to help him fight Ultron. And because they think that most of the Avengers are dead, turns out they're just in comas. And Thor, Iron Man, Wonder Man, and Black Panther, who seems to always be in the right place at the right time because he wasn't captured by Graviton, he wasn't killed or comatized by Ultron.
Yeah.
So the next one I think is sort of a semi just deadline doom issue because it's a one shot, but they do shoehorn in there that Hank is getting better.
Yeah.
So maybe it's not. I never sure 100% if this was an inventory issue that they just added a little bit to, but either way, it's still relatively in
Sure.
continuity. That leads to the 3-part Count Nefarious story, where he gives the Whirlwind, the Living Laser, and the former Power Man. He jacks up their powers to fight the Avengers, but basically all he's doing is basically he's siphoning off their power, so all the powers he gives him eventually flow into him and basically makes Nefaria virtually unstoppable, and he just beats the living daylights out of the Avengers. Drops a skyscraper on them that luckily Wonder Man's able to hold up until they get rescued. But there's a scene in there where Captain America is becoming less and less effective in these battles, and Iron Man has been in and out in his own books, as has Thor. And once again, it's the Scarlet Witch that basically just unloads on all of them at various points in time.
Yeah.
And at the end of 165, here's Thor showing up out of the blue again, and he even he can't defeat Nefaria. And what ends up happening is Hank Pym wakes up the Vision, who has been still in a coma from the Ultron battle. And when he comes out, it's like seems to be even more robotic than ever. He goes a mile into the air, calculates where Nefaria is going to be, turns to his hardest form and just falls, landing on him. That's what finally beats him. And that also gives Wanda another chance to, criticize the leadership of the team, because Captain America has been very critical of Iron Man. And then Wanda says, well, let's talk about how much of a factor you've been recently.
Yeah.
It seems to be the only time you've been a factor is when you got in my way and prevented me from defeating Nefaria and blah, blah, blah. So things are on their way to coming to a head, but we're not going to be able to do that necessarily right away because we're now at the beginning of the Korvac Saga.
How, from a personnel standpoint, how could you be the leader of the Avengers when Captain America is right over here, constantly nitpicking everything you do, and yet when the Wasp is in control, Cap keeps his trap shut. But boy, Iron Man couldn't get a break in that about this time.
Well, you can look at it one of two ways. Cap learned his lesson because when they finally had it out, I think in issue 170, where basically Iron Man apologizes, and then Cap returns the apology, and Iron Man tries to tell him who he is, and Cap won't hear it, and then
Right.
from that point forward, they are completely simpatico because it's like they worked it out.
Yeah.
So maybe you can say that Cap learned from that to where he was more deferential to because Cap is a natural leader. He's theoretically he could pick apart anybody's leadership style.
Yes.
But he doesn't
Now
anymore.
I'm a continuity geek, and if I'll read something that couldn't possibly happen, I make a big fuss about it. When Spider-Man wanted to join the Avengers back in Spider-Man Annual number 3, they gave him a test. And what was that simple test? Oh, go defeat the Hulk. And of course, you know the story. He feels sorry for Dr. Banner, and he pretty much could have joined him, could have beaten him, but he didn't. But how many roster changes did they have where basically the She-Hulk shows up and they go, "You're in"? So that always kind of bugs me.
You know what? But okay. To be fair, if you look at some of those crazy stories that Marvel did in the first 5 years,
yeah,
where where were all these crazy monsters that the superheroes fought in the early days? Um, you know, Iron Man goes back in the time and meets Cleopatra, and they meet
Cyclops.
a Cyclops, and it's
Yeah.
like, I give them some leeway in the first 5 or so years, kind of figuring it all out. Yeah, because and they didn't task him with defeating him. They said, "Bring him to us."
Yeah.
Like that's going to be any easier.
He's
But
going to escort him this way.
yeah, it's so. Yeah, I don't know that but it made for a fun story. That's one of my
It did.
favorite annuals.
It did.
So yeah, it's so Korvac Saga. So I take it you are a fan of that one as well.
Oh yeah. However, the great thing about the Korvac Saga is they show him a little bit here and there in the background. He's observing. He's keeping an eye on things. He's got his girlfriend, and he's just chilling. And then, issue after issue, they'll get involved over here. The Collector is stealing people over here, and they have to figure that out. Hercules, Black Widow show up. Just a lot of stuff going on. Korvac's just over here. He's like on the back burner. And then when it comes time for the big showdown, I don't want to steal anything you're getting ready to say.
No,
but, I thought, okay, this is it. This is it. And he worries about his girlfriend, and, well, then it's all done. And that's why I like the what if, because the what if said, wait a minute, it could have gone differently. But not that I wanted it to go that way.
Right.
But I thought we deserved a better fight because there was such a buildup.
Well,
I might be reading too much into it.
Well, here's my take on that. That the fight itself wasn't supposed to be the takeaway from what had been building up to. I think the reason why you had so much buildup and so many things happening around it, because there's another battle with Ultron.
Yeah.
There was the Collector, who we find out was popping Avengers out of existence to preserve them, because the Collector knows what's coming, or so he thinks, because we find out that Michael / Korvac's girlfriend is the Collector's daughter.
Yes.
And
is the Collector the first slabber?
That's a very good question.
It's a dumb question.
But if Gratu were still here, he'd say he's one of the slabbing people.
Yes.
And I think, like I said, the buildup was, there's some great individual scenes where Thor and Wanda go into a church.
Yeah.
And Thor expresses his uneasiness.
Yeah.
Yeah. He goes, basically, I said, wondering if they should worship him here, and like Wanda's just like, should they? It's just they're just. I really liked how Wanda's character was developed, because she wasn't as just bitchy for bitchy's sake as she was in the early 100s, which led to her, Agatha Harkness training her, which factored into the Celestial Madonna storyline to a point. But like I said, there, along the way, I'd forgotten to mention that the two-gun kid had come back from the past, after one of their battles with Kang, and he was hanging out with Hawkeye, who left the team. They just went out to hang out in the Old West, the current day Old West. And so he's one of the ones that the Collector blipped. And there's a line where I can't remember who it says, but I've never forgotten. It's like this: Avengers are disappearing faster than snowballs on a Miami sidewalk. Yes. I always loved that line.
I remember that. I kind of thought of it, like I said, the Collector is kind of like a slabber. And he's looking around and he goes, hey, there's Two-Gun Kid. He's a golden age. I'm going to grab that. It's like a rare find. You don't expect to see that, Now you'll never think of that differently.
And then comic collector geek said, I got better than that.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think then, because you mentioned there's a scene where Starhawk, one of the Guardians, because you mentioned, for anybody who hasn't read this,
Right.
it starts. He was originally a Guardians villain, and the Guardians come back to the past because they've basically tracked him to the past, but they don't know basically where he is or who he is at this point. And Starhawk he's the first one to figure it out, and Michael basically just dispatches him with no problem.
Yep.
And then recreates him, but with no knowledge of him of any kind. And that ends up being crucial down the road when they finally do confront Michael. It could go either way, but Starhawk's going, "Why are you trying to embarrass me? There's no one there."
Right.
And that's where they all figured out. And he goes, basically, he's like, "Oh dear, I'd hoped it wouldn't come to this." So
Yes.
they have to fight. And the fight is very anticlimactic because he is all powerful. And he just basically wipes them all out. And except for Captain America, who he basically either forgot about or dismissed. So he powers down, and that's when Captain America attacks, calls him Mike. And it's just a very powerful scene. And he goes, "I don't care how strong you are, how powerful you are, I'll find a way to stop you." Then he powers back up and says, "Given time, I think you would, but time has run out for you." And he basically just flings him to his death. And then his wife, the collector's daughter, is saying this has just gone horribly wrong.
Who, by the way, loves him and is okay with, yeah, I know you just killed my dad, but I still love you, Korvac. You give me.
But they address that.
Yes.
Because I said, I mean, because she believes in him. And, it's not like her dad hadn't done some shitty things. Yes, he's an elder of the universe, but he's also been kind of a dick.
Yeah.
So, in order for Michael to do what he's going to do, he's basically the gist of this, what we find out is Michael is benevolent. He wasn't planning to interfere. He was just going to make everything. But even that is why it realized it doesn't work if you, I don't know how to put this, that the Avengers, I guess she realized that even with the limited participation, it's taking free will, even taking a little bit of free will, or however or what she perceived that to be, was too much. So she basically uses her life to give life back to the Avengers.
Yeah.
At least enough to where Dr. Blake can be saved. And then Michael realizes that, it's over. So he basically allows himself to be destroyed.
Yes.
But the takeaway is, the Avengers were the bad guys. They didn't know they were, but they were. Yeah. And that was so unheard of in its day. And so I was okay with the ending seemingly being anticlimactic, because I don't know how else it could have ended in comic book continuity. Now, if you like a what if where anything can happen, I can see what you were saying, but because the character, obviously you couldn't kill all the Avengers and go on from there,
right?
So it made a very powerful story, and the fact that and then of all people, Moondragon was the only one that knew the truth.
Yeah.
Now, as far as I know, I don't know that they ever revisited that. Because Moondragon ended up becoming a problem, on her own, because there's a story arc in the Avengers where she basically manipulates Thor again.
Yeah. And
gets to the point to where Odin says, "All right, enough of this shit," and puts that headband on her and ships her off to the Defenders. But yeah, I thought that just reading that and just realizing that, Michael was right. And unfortunately, another thing that would be a great topic for a stream someday would what would be the perfect send off for a character? Like I said, in a perfect world, Fantastic Four 200, where Reed finally defeats Doom 1-on-1.
Yeah.
That'd have been it for Doom. But Doctor Doom is the most powerful or the most popular supervillain at Marvel Comics, so obviously he had to come back. Korvac should never have seen the light of day after Avengers 177. Any subsequent appearance just cheapens it because you can't top that. And now he just goes back to being the same like cookie cutter villain he was. What's the point? It I mean, it doesn't cheapen the Korvac saga because I just choose to ignore what came after. But yeah, I said to me, it's my favorite storyline of all time. I think there was just so much going on, and I said that the good guys were actually the bad guys, and
Okay.
but my only regret is, yeah. Now John Buscema had to do the last issue of the Kree Skrull War. George Perez couldn't finish the Korvac saga, and a fantasy artist named David Wenzel did the last 3 issues. Oh, there was a Marvel annual event, I think 91 or something like that was a Korvac thing, but yeah. So, and whereas I'm sure he's fine on fantasy, the art was just, it was such a letdown, coming from Perez to this guy. No disrespect to him. That's another thing that we'll never be able to do now is I wanted to see the George Perez cut where he went back and did. Oh yeah, and Chris Cantwell used him in Iron Man. Chris can't write well. I would have loved to have seen the George Perez cut where he drew those last 3 issues to see what they would have looked like with his art. But obviously we didn't, and we can't now. But I thought it was just a tremendous storyline.
Let me talk about the what if just for a second.
Sure.
So this issue, I got that off the rack as a kid, and I ate that up because I got really fascinated in all these super powerful creatures that are out there in the universe and that control everything. And I noticed that when Korvac kills the Avengers, he then takes a look around and goes, there's 3 people that could cause me some headache, so I need to get rid of them: Doctor Strange, Phoenix, and the Silver Surfer. Now, I don't know if I would have ranked those as the 3 most powerful. 2 of the 3 I would. I don't know if I would have put Silver Surfer right up there. I would have thought, unless he's just talking about on the Earth at the moment, that's got to be what he's talking about, because I would figure Galactus would be more powerful than the Silver Surfer. However, I could be wrong, but so he removes those 3 from the universe. I don't exactly know where that is, but have a nice trip. They're out of there, and then of course the rest of the book he takes on Eternity and all those, the Gardener, the Stranger, whatever. But when I go through, what if Phoenix had not died? It has a spot in there where let me just show the art so people know what I'm talking about. Where Havoc shoots at her and stuns her, and according to the Watcher, as you read the words, had Cyclops joined Havoc at the same time, they would have stopped Phoenix. So, would the combination of Cyclops and Havoc be better than Phoenix? I'm probably not explaining that too well, but it's always these what ifs that show you who were the most powerful, ranked over here, ranked over there. But in the Korvac saga, back in the real time of the Avengers, Korvac was worried about Odin and Zeus getting together with a few other guys and being the threat. But I noticed that for the what if, he needs to get rid of Doctor Strange and Phoenix and Silver Surfer. And yet Phoenix apparently could have been taken out by Havoc and Cyclops, the two brothers. So I always go back in my mind, okay, now who could beat who? But that's because I'm an old sports fan, and you can relate to that because could the 67 Packers have beat the 92 Cowboy, that sort of thing. So, but I thought that odd in the what if, but you're not worried about, you just kill the Avengers, which would be Thor. Don't you think Odin is tipped off? I'm talking about the what if.
Yeah,
but he's worried about Doctor Strange and the Phoenix, but Silver Surfer, is the Silver Surfer more powerful? I mean, when Doctor Doom steals Silver Surfer powers, it seems like the world's going to come to an end. So I guess he really is there. But I always thought Galactus would be a little bit more.
Yeah, he must have just been talking about Earth. Who wrote that?
The Phoenix or the
Korvac what if?
I don't have it with me. Sorry. Probably I would guess Englehart, but I've been wrong many times.
I thought you were showing that just a minute ago.
I showed the image. I have a scan of it. I'll have to dig out the book later, so I won't find it till the show's over. The Cowboys. What? Thank you. Okay. Well.
The problem with these kind of questions is you say that, but if you play that game, whatever, if you play it in 1992, those Packers have 25 years more of fitness and training advances than they would have had in 1967. Subsequently, if you play it in 67, the Cowboys would have had 25 years less. So, like for everybody that says Oscar Robertson couldn't start in today's NBA, bull hockey. He would dominate because he would have the same advantages that all the other athletes have, and he'd have that ability. So, those are hard questions to quantify.
This would totally derail the conversation, but if you put them back in the 1967 referees officiating the game scenario, when you get back there and you punch Troy Aikman after he's thrown the ball and the referee just looks at you, Troy Aikman would be going, "Where's the flag?" And I think that's where the old Packers would have anyway. But
there's a documentary, it's about an hour long, about football in the 50s and how the league came to the conclusion that they had to clean it up, or it wouldn't have survived the 60s because it had gotten so violent, after plays, and it's fascinating documentary. But
the Raiders alone.
Well, this was NFL. This even predated the AFL, but oh, come on, New York. I looked up and it said, if you written on the wall behind home plate, get vaccinated with the latest COVID-19.
Good night.
So what year are we in? Anyway,
they're still pushing that.
Yeah.
But we thank I Love Disney for trying to chip in on that. We appreciate it. But Korvac, powerful creatures in the universe, Eternity, the In-Betweener, the Gardener. I'm leaving out about 5, but the Living Tribunal and all those guys.
Poor Fireball couldn't even spell sports right and put him to sleep so quick.
I don't remember this issue. This is a what if. So, okay, so that's Korvac. Did you want to do any Celestial Madonna?
Well, we can touch on it. I mean, it's
sure.
I brought him. This was okay. Basically, this storyline was the Avengers. Manus may or may not be the Celestial Madonna, as we've come to find out during her time with the Avengers, and Kang, Rama, Tut, and Immortus all want her for their own purposes, and they may or may not all be the same person, et cetera, et cetera. And it's basically just it's a really neat storyline. I mean, here's the first part in 129. And then it continues in Giant Size Avengers 2.
Sweet.
Which is the best known for this is the death of the Swordsman. And the Swordsman was a Marvel villain throughout the 60s and into the 70s who shows up with Manus in issue 114, I think. No, Manus shows up in 112, and then Swordsman and her show back up in 114. And, he wants to be in the event. He wants to join the Avengers, which, if you got his first appearance, was he forced himself onto the team, but was a villain. But he was a villain with just enough of a code of ethics that kind of prevented him from he wouldn't kill a helpless opponent. So like that. I mean, he at least had some honor, which was kind of like a lot of Marvel villains did, which is kind of what made him unique. But this time he genuinely seemed to be reformed, and he was in love with Manus, who we find out pretty quickly is not in love with him. So he's kind of set up as like a kind of a loser, but it kind of becomes almost like a tragic figure. And when he dies, he dies a hero's death, but he doesn't he doesn't think so. And that's when Manus finally realizes she does love him, because she'd been flirting with the Vision, for months. And then we get a couple issues where they fight this group of sweethearts, and
great cover.
That it's kind of reminiscent of that Avengers annual too.
Yes.
And there's like one of them, I can't remember which villain it is, basically brings back a bunch of dead characters to fight him, which is kind of interesting because we get Wonder Man again, and only this Wonder Man's not a real nice guy. And then you have the guy, Frankenstein monster, Immortus, Death, or what I forgot the guy, forgot his name. This one here, I think he was a master of governor of Kung Fu opponent. And there's a Giant Size Avengers 3. I always loved this cover.
Yes.
I don't know what it was about this, but then as the story goes on, they do the origin of the Vision, how it at the time it tied to the original Human Torch, and so it just kind of goes on. Then we get another Ultron story, but basically this leading up to is the Vision and Scarlet Witch get married.
Yes,
and the Manus who, because there's a time where it's where it's possible that Moondragon, I think, could have been the Celestial Madonna, maybe Wanda, but it ends up being Manus, and she marries the Katati, which has taken the human form of the Swordsman, who's basically like a living tree god. But there's a lot of fun along the way, even if I did a shitty job of describing it.
Well, she pops up in the FF. I don't know the number, but Ron Friends is doing the artwork. Everything looks really nice in Kirby. I really love that part of the FF. After Thing took over the group for a little while.
Yeah.
She's Celestial. She's in that. And looking great, by the way.
And she shows up in the Silver Surfer also.
Yeah.
So and do you know what else she showed up in?
I'm drawing a blank.
Justice League.
No.
Steve Englehart snuck her into a Justice League story.
Oh, good grief, yeah. And as well, obviously I'm not the Madonna. Okay. By the way, you asked who wrote the Korvac What If. It was Mark Grunwald. So
Okay, so because I was going to say I'd have been surprised if that had been Shooter, because for as knowledgeable as Mark Grunwald was, and obviously with What If you can do it however you want, but basically his version of Michael is a villain.
yeah,
Whereas in the Korvac Saga he was not. That's a the difference between the two.
yeah, and that crazy thing ends with his girlfriend becoming part of him to add to his power, and then he's sitting on the planet waiting for the guys to show up so they could duke it out. But as I just ate that stuff up. I thought it was really great.
The What Ifs were fun. The original series, when they actually changed existing stories that people remembered.
Yeah.
I mean, like the first couple, first 3 or 4 What Ifs, I thought were phenomenal. Oh no, I did not. Thank you, Jackson. Yeah.
Yeah.
167.
And there we go. Sweet.
168. This is where they, that's Guy Rich there that shows up. 169, I didn't pull because it's a filler issue. 170 is another fight with Ultron. This is where Captain America and Iron Man, they patch up their differences. Right. This is Avengers 171, and Ms. Marvel shows up in this issue to help out the team, and this is one of my favorite Avengers covers of all time. It's just,
really? Okay.
Oh yeah, well I love floating heads.
Yeah.
And the Hawkeye pose I think is wonderful. It's just like the orange in the background. It's just nothing else to really get in the way of it. And here's 173.
Now that's a cover. Black Widow was looking great there. A Yellow Jacket is just to me that's cool.
No complaints. I mean, I'm with you on that. Here's 174.
Yes, I showed that one, Jackson. So,
and then there's 175.
There it is. Yeah. And by the way, all these stories to me lead to the Beyonder.
176. And 177.
Yeah. Notice he has his hospital bag there. So when he appears, I don't know if his bag shows up as well.
It's comics.
Yes, I like it. But yeah, all these the Korvac, and then in the Phoenix, who could beat the Phoenix? And then you get all these. Then you finally get to the Beyonder and the Secret Wars, which boy, there's a ton of Avengers in that, and great. I liked the Secret Wars. I realized they were selling some toys. I get that, and I realized they wanted an excuse to get a black costume on Spider-Man, but overall, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the Mike Zeck artwork. I enjoyed the Doctor Doom versus Beyonder. I thought it was great.
I think that there was a period of time where it was in vogue to trash that series.
Yeah.
I think it has come around to where it's a lot better thought of now than it was maybe 20 years ago. Because I mean, I remember everybody liked it when it came out, but it immediately got overshadowed by Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Right. So, and then maybe the second war, maybe they could have waited a little bit longer for that one.
That's it. There wasn't a war. It was just basically he kept showing up, and by that time, I think Shooter was starting to wear out his welcome at Marvel, because he was basically shoehorning him into everybody's storylines that were Because
Yeah.
I know John. Basically, I think that was the last straw for Byrne.
So yeah, the thing about the second war is you got to have him showing up in Thing. This Thing is a pro wrestler. You got to have this building turn to gold in Power Man and Iron Fist.
Yeah.
You got to have him over here and over there. And oh, he's looking into the childhood of Dr. Banner and the Hulk. And some of these were pretty good stories. He's messing around with the Avengers for a while. But it was like, oh my goodness, I got to shell out and buy every Marvel comic off the stands. I don't know. Was there a book that he didn't show up in? Maybe maybe GI Joe. I don't know.
There were a lot. I mean, there were a lot of crossovers. And but I'll say that a lot of the writers made the best. It made chicken salad out of chicken bleep.
Yeah, yeah.
I said the Byrne issue of Fantastic Four with the boy that the Human Torch fan that set himself on fire. That ended up being one of the most powerful individual comics I've ever read. And they actually made the Beyonder come across as a pretty intelligent guy and not just a. I mean, there's some of those issues where he's just like, Durr.
Yeah, but when he becomes a man and gets born in that machine that he makes, I thought that was brilliant.
But yeah, I said so. I said I didn't mind that. Again, a lot of people trash that.
Yeah,
It didn't bother me. It's nice of you to join us there, Captain.
and if you want to see more of Captain, tune in next week. Well, you'll see there'll be more fossils you can shake a stick at. So, well, Eric, I thought that was a pretty good Avengers. Missing Mars just gave us a really good compliment. Wildly Schools on the Avengers. So, they don't call him the professor for nothing. So,
Well, I said that just to me, there. If you go back to, I mean, the early issues were fun in their own way.
yeah,
Once it grew up, it just because you got characters that had their own books and characters that worked well together. The roster was always changing. I mean, that annual I showed, the very next issue, they introduced the Vision, and there's always something going on. And then we didn't, we stopped, right before the, I think it was Michelini and John Byrne run, which, gave us the Wanda Gore story, with where Wanda gets possessed by, Thawne, or how you pronounce that.
okay.
And then, a couple years after that, we get the Stern run, and people forget, like this, in this like identity politics obsessed era we're in now. Roger Stern just matter of factly made Captain Marvel, a black woman, the leader of the team.
Yeah.
It's just at the same time that I believe Storm was the leader of the X-Men.
Yeah.
But like I said, Stern's Avengers. There were times where they didn't have any of the big three in there,
Right.
but everybody else was just so interesting. And so I say that's there was just something about the Avengers that I thought just made it a little more in my wheelhouse than Fantastic Four, X-Men, or the Defenders. All good books in their own right. Hell, even the 17 Champions were fun to read. But
Agreed. Yeah, great thing about the champions, old Warren Worthington III's keeping that team funded like Tony Stark. And one thing about the Avengers Mansion, the guys that repair that, they're doing a good job because somebody's always tearing the wall out. Or all right, Jay, we're glad you showed up. Thank you, Jay. You're just in time for our fantastic big finish. let's see. Sunday, I believe I am on Night Tiger's show with why it's an early fossil preview, really, because there's about 5 or 6 fossils on that. With Night Tiger, we'll be showing Charlton Comics. And don't forget that this next Wednesday night, it is the fabulous return of the 4-color fossils. And we'll also be joined by Dr. Fibes, making his first appearance on the Fossils Graphic Man program. And can't wait to see you all there. And so we are going to be wrapping up. I'm giving you plenty of time to say your goodbyes in the chat. I noticed that last time about 3 people jumped in just as we had hit the air. We were off the air. And so it's good to see Jay. What time Night Tiger show? Boy. Oh, to be asked these questions. Sunday, May 5th at 7 p.m. Eastern. I'll get back to my screen. Okay. And 7, yes, Fireball, he's on top of it. Goodbye. Goodbye to you all. I'm going to say the phrase that Eric has been wanting to hear. We are going to pull the plug. Take care. And we look forward to seeing Dr. Fibes next week.
Yeah.
And Eric can never say goodbye to me. Okay.
But I can certainly give it the old college try.
For what I saw of the show, I will watch the replay. We hope you like it, Joe. We hope you do. Good night, all you lunatics. Yeah, there's a good name. Somebody called him Graphites. Yeah, I think it was Recess that called him Graphites. So, here's Maranya sneaking in. Take care, everyone, and stay safe out there. And we will pull the plug. So say those magic words, Eric.
Good night, kids.
And